So, welcome to Real Talk. I'm Tanya Sakowitz with Newborn Care Solutions, and we are doing this right now every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific time and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're trying to bring to you a little bit of information about things that can be beneficial to you as a family, as a nanny, as a newborn care specialist, a postpartum doula, and tonight's thing in particular, anybody who's working in a private home. The information that we're going to have shared with us this evening is really relevant to what's going on in our country right now. So tonight's guest is Jay Schultz. He is the president of Homework Solutions. Homework Solutions is a company that specializes in domestic payroll, taxes, and I'll let Jay explain a little bit more about what he does when he gets there. You can read Jay's bio in our feed, but he has been at the helm of Homework Solutions for a while now, and he knows our industry inside and out because that's what they specialize in, is helping families and helping nannies and other caregivers and domestic staff understand all the ins and outs of payroll and taxes and legal pay, things like that. And they've been fiercely committed to this for a long, long time. So we've always been thrilled to death to work with and to recommend Homework Solutions anytime we're asked about where people can go for quality, credible information on this. So we are really excited to have you joining us tonight, Jay.
Thank you, Tanya. Happy to be here. As you said, we are passionate about this, and it's sad that everybody's focusing on it now because it's a crisis, and people are saying, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do income-wise?" And for years, you know full well, you've been an advocate of this too, but we've been arguing for fair and legal pay.
Right.
And so I'm happy to spend all the time necessary right now to help people understand what their rights are, what benefits are available to them, and how they can get a little bit of relief from the government.
Absolutely. So we've had a lot of changes going on in our country, obviously, that impact families. But in particular, there is a new act that has come out that is designed to help families with childcare. The Family First, and I know it has a longer name, but the Family First Act is what a lot of people are referring to it. So if you could tell us kind of what that official name is and kind of how it works and what it is, how does that impact people?
Sure. So this is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, or FFCRA. It's pretty broad, but there are four parts to it that really impact our audience today, right? Household employers and employees. And those four parts are the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act, tax credits for paid sick and paid family and medical leave, right? So tax credits for the first two parts. That's a benefit for the employer. And then the last part that impacts the household employment space is the Emergency Unemployment Insurance Stabilization Act of 2020. I put that one last because it's my least favorite, right? I want everybody to focus on these first three solutions that are really ways that an employer can keep their employee on the books, right? Continue trying to get them income and minimize the impact of this. So I'm happy to step through them, dive into them right away, or if there's a particular question you want me to jump at first, we can do that.
So you can tell us a little bit about that, and then depending on where our answers go, I have some questions we can ask. We will also taking questions kind of towards the end from our audience, so that if they have more specific questions, they can ask those also.
All right, so I'll try to give you the 5-minute overview of this. I know there's going to be lots of questions specific to everybody's situation. We've been getting them for the past couple of weeks, even before this bill passed. But let's touch on the paid sick leave piece, right? So every employer is required to provide paid sick leave to their employees effective April 1st. Right. This bill was passed 2 weeks ago, but this now goes into effect April 1st. The Department of Labor last week gave us that date. And so if you have already received paid leave, that was through the generosity of your employer. Right? But this act takes effect April 1st. And it says that every employee is eligible for up to 2 weeks of paid leave if they are, one, subject to a quarantine, federal, state, or local quarantine order. If they, two, are subject to a physician's orders to stay at home and self-quarantine because they appear to be ill, or maybe they've traveled somewhere or were exposed. Three, if they are exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, of coronavirus, and you are seeking treatment. right? The fourth and fifth categories here. Fourth is if you are caring for someone else who falls into categories 1 through 3, right? They're subject to a quarantine or they are sick and you're caring for them. Number 5, if you are caring for a child who is out of school because the school is closed or the daycare is closed or the child care provider cannot come and take care of the child. So let's say a parent who has a nanny, the nanny says, I'm sick, I can't come. That parent stays home, they qualify for this leave. So there's a very important distinction to make between these 5 different categories. The first 3, effectively, you can think of them as I am sick or potentially sick, right? I have coronavirus. In those cases, you are entitled to 100% of your pay for, again, 2 weeks, up to 80 hours. So if you're a full-time employee, you get 80 hours at your regular rate of pay. If normally you are paid for 55 hours of work, right, very often the case with newborn care specialists or nannies who work longer hours, we have to work through it with you to determine your regular rate of pay. That's a term of art in the payroll world. But we can do that math looking back to say your regular rate of pay is slightly above your hourly rate when you factor in overtime. And you're entitled to 80 hours at that rate over 2 weeks. If you are unable to work due to parts 4 and 5 that I described earlier, so you're caring for someone else who is sick, or you're caring for a child whose school or daycare is closed, you are entitled to 2/3 your regular rate of pay, right? So again, for a period of 2 weeks, 2/3 your regular rate of pay. I also want to point out that this benefit applies to both full-time and part-time employees. So if you are a part-time employee and you normally work 20 hours a week, you are entitled to 20 hours a week for 2 weeks. And the way you determine that number of hours is you actually do a look back over the past 6 months to figure out what the average is and then apply that going forward. So that's the Paid Sick Leave Act. It's the most direct. It's going to be most impactful for people, I believe, and that's the one that many will be tapping into right away. The second one that I touched on is the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Act. So there's already the ability for somebody to take family and medical leave that's unpaid. This act expands upon that and says, well, we're going to allow for paid family and medical leave if you are caring for someone else who is home because their school is closed, right? So many people across country, their kids are home, they cannot go and work. The extended paid family and medical leave is going to pay for an additional 10 weeks of paid leave. So 12 weeks total, 2 weeks of the paid sick leave, 2 weeks of the paid family and medical leave. But again, that paid family medical leave piece is not for you if you individually are sick, right? Then you're just relying upon the 2 weeks of paid leave. The third piece, the tax credits. I just want to hit on this quickly before we'll come back to the questions that I'm sure are coming in. The tax credits, this is important because I want everybody to know this. I want every employee to understand this so they feel confident going and talking to their employer and bringing a solution, right? There is a tax credit in this bill that will reimburse an employer 100% for the cost of this paid leave. Right. So in the household employment space, usually you pay your federal taxes quarterly or annually. When you make those payments, you as an employer will just pay less. You will receive a tax credit that offsets your tax liability. It's fully refundable. So you as an employer are going to get all of the money back. So the employees on the call, I really want you to think about this. If you're going to your employer and saying, I know you're struggling to determine what do we do, can you provide me paid sick leave, or do I have to go on unemployment? You can tell your employer, if you provide me this paid sick leave so that I can stay home while I'm ill, or if I'm caring for my child, you will be reimbursed by the government. And then we'll touch on the unemployment part a little bit later, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So do you have some particular questions about that one that have come in?
Yeah. So one of the questions that came in already that said, I thought small businesses were exempted up to 12 weeks.
I'm glad you asked that. We've heard that a lot. So there is a piece in this bill that says small businesses with 50 or fewer employers may be exempted at the discretion of the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department has not issued additional guidance on what that means yet. There is also a piece in this bill that says a business must be able to document that providing this leave effectively is going to put them out of business. right? That they are in such a dire cash flow circumstance that they cannot afford to front the money for leave for their employee. And so I don't expect that exemption is going to be applied very widely. I think it's also difficult in the household employment space for many to say, well, my business is going to go out of business. It's a household, and if you still have the need for childcare because you individually are a essential worker and you have to go work, you still have income and you can still afford childcare. So broadly speaking, in the space in which we all work, I don't think you're going to see this exemption apply.
Okay. So one of the questions that came up, she said, are you going to have this information on your website? Yeah, we actually have some resources that Homework Solutions has shared with us that are going to be posted in the feed here. And I know that there's a ton of information on the Homework Solutions website and on their blog because I've been seeing it come in. So there's a ton of information there. They also wanted to know, will we have this information in Spanish as well?
So we have not yet put it in Spanish on the Homework Solutions website. That's something we're working on. I will tell you, if you go to the Department of Labor website or just hop on Google and put Department of Labor coronavirus, you will find a link to the DOL coronavirus response website. It's a bit long, so I won't read off the whole URL right now. But they do have a fact sheet for employers and a fact sheet for employees, both in English and in Spanish. And I absolutely would recommend you hop in there and download that fact sheet for employees. That would be very helpful to all of you.
Okay, fantastic. So another question that came up says, I am a postpartum doula, and I'll explain something to you in just a second, Jay, about that. And my contract has been canceled until the shelter in place is lifted. How do I apply? Now, I will tell you that although this is not completely across the board, as a general rule of thumb, most postpartum doulas operate as an independent contractor, their own business. As a general rule of thumb, postpartum doula training organizations teach that what they are providing is a service and not childcare, and so they qualify differently. And I don't know how this particular person has theirs set up, but the question again was, my contract has been canceled. How do I, until this is lifted, how do I apply?
Yeah, so you made a great point there in differentiating between employees and business owners, right, who are sole proprietors and running their own business. In either case, right, there's employment taxes. Either your employer, the family is paying them, or you, the business owner, are paying those taxes. This bill does have a piece built into it for self-employed individuals. And so you can go to the Homework Solutions website and get some links to the details on the bill. You're welcome to give us a call and talk with us about it. But generally speaking, I'll tell you there is a refundable tax credit for self-employed individuals for the sick leave that you pay yourself. Right. So the same way that any employer who has an employee that they're providing that leave to, if it's documented and it's a valid reason for the leave, right, that meets those 5 circumstances I gave earlier. If you're self-employed and you have to take leave because of those things, then that qualifies. If you have to take leave because your contract is canceled, I'm not sure that's going to qualify under the terms of this bill, right? Because you individually are not sick. That sounds like a business who has had a contract canceled. Right. And that's unfortunately a risk that you're taking. And I don't have, off the top of my head, a terrific resource for you that you can go to in this bill. I will tell you there's another bill that just got passed last Friday, and that's called the CARES Act. And all the attorneys are currently digging through this one. I've been on the phone all weekend with attorneys digging into the CARES Act. And that's where I believe you're going to find the relief for a self-employed individual who is seeing their revenue decline. Right, they're seeing contracts canceled. That's where you're going to find some relief there. You can apply for a forgivable loan through the CARES Act. Okay, that could be a whole nother webinar we could do in a week or two if you'd like.
Absolutely, and we may. So another question says, my daughter is a nanny and her family is requiring her to stay home for 2 weeks, even though she's been on lockdown with me for over 2 weeks now. They're not going to pay her for the quarantine period. I'm unsure what her rights are.
Yeah, so it's very difficult. I'm not an attorney, I'll tell you that, right? But I believe that the family probably doesn't have the right to tell the employee that they have to stay at home if the employee's not working, right? The employee's not working for the family during that time. If the family is saying, well, look, I need you to quarantine under this quarantine order that the state has issued, well, then
we're in Arizona. Arizona is
and they haven't yet, right? But in the future, if one did,
mm-hmm.
all right, then you're falling under this bill, right? Mm-hmm. Because the state has issued the order and the employee is following that order, and therefore you have to provide them this paid leave. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those situations where I would really recommend that you first have an open and honest discussion with your employer, right? Tell them what you know of this bill. Go to our website, download the resources from Homework Solutions, go to the Department of Labor website, download the resources there, both for employer and employee, and go to that discussion. If it's on the phone, right, email it to them and walk them through the document. The document describes what your rights are as an employee. It also describes for the employer the tax credits that are available, right? And so that's where I'm telling you, you're bringing not only, here's my concern, here's my problem, but you're bringing the solution, right? I have something that can help us get through this together.
Right. And I'm always a huge, huge fan of, if there's a problem, come with a potential solution, because it makes you look like you're part of the team and really want to help fix things rather than just point fingers and point blame.
Yeah. And I would say, I'm noticing we're getting tons of calls from families asking, what can I do? Right. And they're not calling asking, how do I get out of this? Right. They're calling saying, what can I do for my employee that's not going to be financially ruinous for us, right, as employers? Because many of these families are out of work too, and they're trying to fight to get the same benefits from their employer. And so I'd encourage employees, keep that in mind when you're having that discussion with your employer. Tell them to call Homework Solutions or another company like ours who can guide them through this and help them find some solutions.
Absolutely. So this one says, I've been laid off because of complete loss of income for my employers. If they keep me on, will they receive any kind of reimbursement or tax incentives? And it says where can I find information on this?
Okay, so that's actually kind of taking us to the fourth part of this bill. So very well-timed question. Thank you. So in the case of someone who has been laid off or furloughed or what's called a reduction in force, right? A position is eliminated. In that situation, there is additional funding in this bill that's going to the state unemployment departments, right? Because we're already seeing a flood of unemployment claims coming in, and the states are going to be overwhelmed by them. So the funding has gone to provide benefits direct to employees and to fund the administration of those departments so that they can process claims faster and get money in the pockets of employees more quickly. So if you have been laid off, if you have been furloughed, and if you have been subject to a reduction in force, the position is eliminated, you can apply for unemployment benefits. I hope that your employer has been paying legally and paying on the books and filing your unemployment insurance every quarter. If they have not, it does not mean you're not entitled to benefits as an employee. It's just going to take longer because your employer, you're going to file a claim. The state's going to say, we don't have record of you working for that person. They're going to kind of pull the string, go back to the employer, and the employer is going to have to pay back taxes, right, and penalties and interest. I recommend that employers get on the books soon, go back and do their taxes from the prior year so that when you go and file your claim, you can get those benefits right away. To encourage people to do this, and we actually are waiving our fees for prior year tax returns because we want people to get their employees on the books. So if you're in that situation, by all means, give us a call, have your employer give us a call. Just mention Free 2019, and we want to help you get on the books because we don't want you worried about this. Now, you asked also in that question about if I go back to my employer, do they get access to these benefits? The answer is yes, right? If your employer rehires you, any paid sick leave or paid family medical leave that you are taking after April 1st qualifies under this program. So that's important for you to keep in mind. If your employer made that decision because they weren't sure how they'd be able to afford it, and now you can help them understand that there's a tax credit that can offset some of this, maybe they'll hire you back and provide the paid leave.
Fantastic. So this says, if the family chooses to self-isolate, but the nanny does not need to, then I assume these criteria are not applicable. I'm not sure.
That's correct. So the way I understand the question, you're saying a family has determined that, we want to keep our social circle very small. We don't want anybody coming and going. Therefore, I don't need the work from you. That is one of three things. That's either a furlough, which is a temporary reduction in hours, could be all the way to zero. But in the case of a furlough as an employee, you still can receive benefits. If your employer provides medical insurance, you can still get that. It could be a layoff, which is a reduction in hours of 100% of your hours, or it could be a reduction in force. They could say, look, I don't know when I'm ever going to need you back, so we are eliminating the position. In all three of those instances, you are entitled to apply for unemployment benefits. You can get unemployment benefits just for a furlough and a reduction in work hours. So if you normally work 40 hours and now you're cut to 20, you can go and apply for unemployment benefits. That varies by state, but I'd recommend you check with your state unemployment division to see if you can apply and get benefits there.
Fantastic. So this next one says, hang on, here we go. What if you are still employed by a caregiver agency who wants to send you to an essential worker home, but are worried about the threat of catching COVID-19? Can you file for standby status if you're still employed, but all of your jobs in the past 2 weeks have been canceled and no future jobs are coming in?
So I'm not sure what you mean by standby status there, but what I understood of that question was basically, can you opt not to go to a job that's offered to you, right? If you are let's say a temp nanny, if you choose not to go, that's you choosing not to go. You can't say, well, I don't have work. If you are being asked to go to work at a job where someone is known to have been exposed and potentially be sick, I think you probably have a way that you can say, I don't want to go to that position. Again, I'm not an employment attorney, so I can't give you, exact guidance on that. I'd recommend you reach out to somebody who is an attorney if that's the situation.
Okay. So the next question, because I think we're just going to probably end up just answering all the questions from the feed. If I'm already on unemployment before this whole COVID thing, what benefits will we receive?
I don't expect that anything's going to change if you are already receiving unemployment benefits. Right. The point of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act is really to beef up the system, right, and make sure that there's still additional money behind the state unemployment insurance funds, and then provide the paid sick leave. The reason I listed these four things off in the order that I did is I think they're also the reason the government put them in place, right? Their goal is, how do we keep money in the hands of employees as quickly as possible? It's have them stay on the books with the employer, right? Provide paid sick leave, provide paid family leave, give the employer an incentive to do it, and then fall back upon the unemployment system if necessary. But there's nothing in here that's going to increase the benefit amount you're receiving through the unemployment insurance fund. It's just increasing the total pool because the number of claims are going through the roof. I will point out, we won't get into it in too much depth here, but the CARES Act that was passed last Friday does contain a benefit for every taxpayer who, a stimulus check basically is what they're calling it, right? You're going to receive a stimulus check of $1,200 per individual. And that is assuming that you have filed your taxes from prior years. That $1,200 amount applies as long as your income is $75,000 or below in the prior tax year. And you actually will receive a stimulus check all the way up to adjusted gross income as an individual of $100,000. And that number is double if you are married filing jointly. So you'll see you can still have a substantial income and you're about to receive a stimulus check from the government. I saw something today that the Treasury Department is planning to have those out in 3 weeks.
Wow. That's pretty fast. Yeah. Next question was, is it within a nanny's right to refuse to use their paid time off for the quarantine period?
Yes. So if you have the right to use your paid time off, right? You are not required to. The paid sick leave is primary, right? So if you are sick, you use the paid sick leave first. If you fall under one of the 5 categories that I gave you earlier, right? Even if you're caring for a child, you're not sick yourself, use the paid sick leave first. After that is exhausted, or if, let's say you don't fall into any of those categories, right? You are not sick, you're not caring for somebody who's sick, there's no indication that you will be, and you'll have to stay home. You just choose not to go to work because you don't want to potentially be exposed to this. That's a choice that you are making. You can use your paid time off in that situation, right? But the employer is not required to give you any paid sick leave because you are opting not to go to work. But it's important. Keep in mind, the government's goal here is not to place additional burdens on you or to make you use the leave that you have stockpiled first, right? They're looking to provide additional income to you so you don't have to draw that down and to refund employers to cover some of the cost.
Okay. So this one, I'm just going to tell you, you commented we might need to do another webinar.
Yeah.
We got a please do another webinar on the CARES Act because there are a lot of postpartum doulas in this group, and on that information would be super helpful. And of course, as you and I know, there are some newborn care specialists who have everything set up correctly and also work that way.
Yeah, and we will get all the information that we have out to you about it. We're still researching it ourselves, as I mentioned.
Okay.
On the phone with attorneys all weekend long, trying to understand. I actually want to know if we can extend this all the way to families.
Right.
If
so
they can take along too, that'd be great.
Yeah. So you let us know when you're ready.
Okay.
I'll get you back on it. So am I still qualified to get unemployment even though I have one of my families still paying me? It's only 10 hours. I assume that's 10 hours per week.
Yeah. So it sounds like in this situation, this individual has multiple employers, right? And so now you have a reduction in hours. Let's say you used to work for two families, one paid you for 30 hours, the other for 10. The one that pays you for 10 is still paying you, but you're now only getting 10 hours a week, right? You can file an unemployment claim, and that's going to be against the other employer's account, if you will. It's not going to harm the other employer in any way. States are coming out and saying that they are not going to change the rates that employers pay as a result of this, because these are not layoffs that are at the whim of an employer, right? These are layoffs that are coming because the economy is ground to a halt in order to slow the spread of the virus. So in that situation, yes, you can file an unemployment claim. You need to think of it and realize that you have multiple employers, right? The unemployment system is not looking just, do you have any jobs? They're happy that you have one job because the amount of benefit that you're going to receive might be slightly reduced because you do still have some income, but they probably will be providing something to supplement it.
Okay. Cool. So this next one says, what if we haven't been working together for a full quarter? I'm only working 6 hours per week.
Okay. So the benefits provided in this bill are to all active employees. If you're an active employee, you are entitled to the paid sick leave benefits. If you've been employed for 30 days or more, then you're entitled to the extended paid family medical leave, right? So if you have to stay home and take care of your child for up to an additional 10 weeks, right? 12 weeks total. So as long as you are employed and working on April 1st, these are benefits that you're entitled to.
Okay. Perfect. So this one, I've been home since 3/19. My mom collapsed, was critical, and has since been diagnosed with COVID-19. And I've been home since on the advice of the doctors and my doctor for self-quarantine. I have great employers. I'm a full-time nanny. What advice would you give me that's beneficial to us both? They have been home with the kids, and I am paid on the books.
Yeah. First off, that all sounds great. I'm happy you have a good relationship with your employers. I think that we're seeing a lot of that, right, where employers and employees are working together. The leave that has been paid to you since March 19th is not going to qualify for reimbursement under the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. It's only leave paid from April 1st forward. So I would encourage you to go talk to your employer about that. Grab the fact sheet from the Department of Labor website or go to our Knowledge Center. You can download it there, or have your employer give us a call and we can walk them through what their options are. But at least let them know from April 1st forward, they can provide you two additional weeks of paid sick leave, assuming that you are still subject to this quarantine or you are still staying home to care for a loved
one. Okay. Does Homework Solutions have Spanish-speaking agents that help with your service for the nanny community that needs your help?
We do. I will admit it is limited. Our most proficient Spanish speaker is out on maternity leave right now, so this was not the best timing for that. We'd love to have Luz back, but we're happy for her. If you give us a call or send us an email, we will do our best to work through it and get you the resources that you need.
Okay, perfect. Lauren had a question. You answered this mostly earlier, but we can give her just a short, quick response to it. Do you need to have been on the books during 2019? What if it's only 2020 that you've actually been on the books?
Yeah, so go back and get on the books for 2020, right? If you're an employer, we encourage you to go do it. If you're an employee, we encourage you to ask your employer to do it. If you actually go to our Knowledge Center, Kathy Webb, our founder, Tanya, a good friend of yours, actually did a little analysis of this, right? To look at it and say, if you were to go back and get your employee on the books, what's it really going to cost you? And it is significantly less expensive than not providing your employee the benefits that they are entitled to right now, getting sued by your employee. Because if you do that, your employee is entitled to all the benefits that they get, double it, because for their time and effort as a penalty, you have to pay them twice as much, and you're still going to pay the taxes and the penalties. So you're much better off as an employer to go back, get on the books for the prior year, make sure your employee has access to the unemployment benefits that they need right now, and make sure that they have access to this paid leave going forward, and that you as an employer can get reimbursed by the government. I mentioned it before, so a little plug. We will help you do the prior year for free. We want employees to get on the books. We want them to be paid and have access to these benefits.
Fantastic. So next question was, isn't that stimulus check just an advance on the 2020 tax refund? If somebody's making 75 to 100,000 a year, how much of that 1,200, if they get it, should they set aside to pay back on next year's tax bill?
Unfortunately, that's a question for your CPA, right? And this bill has just passed, and I've been focused on the loans to employers and other pieces, so not the individual tax impact of it.
Right.
But viewing it as an advance on a tax credit that you're going to get later, it's still a tax credit. It is still money. It is not just, hey, we're going to give you a check and you're going to pay it back later. That is not what this is. This is overall on the year, it is a reduction in the amount of taxes that you were going to owe.
Okay. So Carla had a question, but Carla, I'm going to tell you that we need a little more information before we can ask that one, because that one doesn't have enough for me to ask Jay the question related to it. Treyonda had a question. If you were about to start a new nanny job and the hiring process was put on hold because of COVID-19, they still file for unemployment?
If you were about to start a new nanny job?
Yeah.
No, because you are not yet employed, right?
Okay.
I would tell you, that's an employer who is not yet paying into the unemployment system on your behalf. It's an interesting question that is probably worth contacting your state division of unemployment to ask that. It might depend on the start date when you were supposed to begin work. But because you are not working for them, they are not required to provide you the paid sick leave that is in FFCRA.
Okay. So this other one we answered earlier too, I think, when we were talking about postpartum doulas. But it says, I am paid on the books as an independent contractor to my LLC. Do I qualify for unemployment for 2 weeks of unpaid leave?
So again, you won't qualify for unemployment if you have your own business, you're self-employed, right? That's where you're going to be looking to the self-employed tax credit that will be a piece of FFCRA.
Okay. I work for a family. This is Carla's question now. I work for a family who's requested for a zero tolerance sick policy in effort to minimize risk and exposure. So far, I've been healthy. However, they have a child who's been ill for about 2 weeks with walking pneumonia and other common cold and sinus infection symptoms. Would I have any rights to paid time off if I ask not to come in due to the child's sickness?
I don't believe so. I don't see anything in this bill that says if you believe someone at your workplace is sick, then you get benefits for not going. I don't think that would be the case.
Okay.
And you might need to speak with an attorney to get an answer to that.
Right. I've been given 30 days paid and then I'm laid off. Does the funding mean that my employers can pay me an additional 2 weeks paid leave and be reimbursed for it? Or would those 2 weeks come out of the 30 days I've been paid?
So I think that's one where you're going to need to speak to your employer, right, to determine what your termination date is. Oftentimes when an employer gives you severance pay, the termination date is today, but they are giving you severance pay for another 30 days. It doesn't mean that you are still employed for the next 30 days. And In that situation, when your employment is terminated today, you get severance pay. You would not still be deemed an employee of that business or of that employer, and therefore you would not be eligible for the paid sick leave that is part of this bill. And an
Okay.
employer does have the right to determine that, we no longer need this position, right?
Mhm.
We don't need childcare anymore. Therefore, the position is eliminated. There are employers who are having to make that difficult decision. Again, we talked to them. We have all over the past couple of weeks, and they don't want to. But some of
Mhm.
them are in a difficult cash flow position too, and they've had to
Right.
make a choice.
Yeah, it can be really tough for them.
Yeah.
So, question: can we email you directly at Homework Solutions?
You can. I will tell you. I'm receiving over 500 emails a day right now. Lots of legal stuff coming through, but you can send it. I will do my best to have a member of our team get a response to you if I can't do it myself. My email address is j@homeworksolutions.com. Real simple, jay@homeworksolutions.com. Your best bet is to email payroll@homeworksolutions.com or essentialpayroll@homeworksolutions.com, or two of our staff members, very highly trained and knowledgeable, Joe and Mary, staff another email box called sales@homeworksolutions.com. So if you want, you can send something to all of those. But the best way to get a hold of us, really, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 7 Eastern, give us a call. And a member of our staff will walk you through everything. You can also go to our website and chat with us right there at homeworksolutions.com.
Fantastic. So, final question for tonight from everybody, and then I'll ask you one kind of final question, and we'll wrap up for this evening. Does this stimulus or unemployment stuff, does this count as income for next year?
Yes, an individual is counting this as income, right? The taxability is income to the individual. There are some offsets for employers. There's some taxes that will not apply on the employer side, but for the employee, this is still income tax, or
Okay.
taxable for income tax purposes.
Right. All right. So, if there was anything else that you want to leave with us, what else do we need to know as caregivers who are dealing with this when we
Yeah,
talk to our employers? What
yeah.
else?
There's a lot of people who have been asking me what's an essential employee, right?
Mhm.
And people just flat out ask me, "Am I essential?" And I will tell you, I've got two young kids, 6 and 4. You are essential. You are to me. I have learned that the hard way. And what you do is valuable. I think your employers know that too. Um, but speak to them about it, right? If you're stuck and you're really worried about this, they are too. Have an open discussion. Make sure you're on the same page and you can work together so that you can get through this together, and that when we come out of this a few weeks from now, we will. You still have a strong working relationship, and the two of you have done everything you can to maximize your income and minimize the impact on you throughout this whole thing.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Jay, so much. And thank you also just to the entire team at Homework Solutions, because you guys have been on it with getting information out there, being an unbelievable resource, just shockingly responsive, frankly, to what's going on. So I know that on behalf of the nanny community and the in home staffing community, that people are so, so grateful and appreciative for all of that. And also for you taking your time to be with us and talk and answer questions. If people have further questions, they may post them in the feed still because
Sure.
this stays up on our page. So we'll tag you
Great.
so that if questions come up, you or a member of the team can answer those questions. But thank you also just for being such a trusted resource in this industry. It means the world to the people who work in it. Homework Solutions website has a ton of great resources. They've shared resources with us as well. And you can continue to ask questions in the feed, even if we're off this and the live has ended. And it sounds like we're likely going to be jumping back on here in the next couple weeks, probably, and doing another one about the CARES Act as soon as Jay is ready to address that, because there are a lot of postpartum doulas and a lot of newborn care specialists in our audience who are operating as legitimate businesses who need that information as well. So, Jay, thank you so much to you and the entire Homework Solutions team. We really very much appreciate it.
My pleasure. We're happy to do it. We believe in everything you do. We're thankful for all the work of the caregivers out there. So call us so we can help.
All
Stay
right.
safe.
Thank you.